All right. Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me. Uh, just to dive right in, can you tell us a little bit about you and your practice?
Yeah, my name is Lucia. My pronouns right now just use my name, Lucia and Lucia's. I am currently in nurse midwifery school, but I come to the work through the lens of a doula. So I've been a full spectrum doula for 3 years this month, actually. And full spectrum, I support people through abortion, loss, pregnancy, and postpartum. I did a lot of work, mostly in New York, like the New York metro area. I'm supporting people in their homes, inside of the medical industrialized complex, and birthing centers, in Planned Parenthoods, all over the place. And I center in my life and in my practice queer people, queer liberation, Black queer folks. I think that we are not an extracurricular, that inclusivity just should be the baseline, that it's not hard to figure out pronouns, that it's not weird to be like, oh, I forget I should just say pregnant people. It's just like, no, just say it. Like, so we can just all come to the table, we can all be included and all have resources. And I hope to imbue my future midwifery practice with that as well. My dream is to like live in a town. Everyone's like, all the queers go to her. So everyone just comes to my big gay birthing center, and I give health to everyone who has internal genitalia, and that's my dream.
I want your big gay birthing center. It's such a
Just
good dream.
flags everywhere, all the flags, every one of the flags, just waving in the wind.
This is so beautiful. Um, and like that might be the answer to this question, but maybe you have another answer to what are you queering right now?
Right now, in this moment, it feels like I'm queering like a very straight educational experience. I am blowing people's minds with like inclusive language. People are like, what? Not everyone's a woman that gives birth. Like, it's just not something that people can wrap their heads around. So right now, it feels like I'm like back to step one of basic queering language in and around reproductive health. I don't think the major women's health nurse practitioner should exist. I think it should be called something else, but that's not my major, so that's someone else's battle. But especially in nursing and just talking about, there's a lot of things that we learn that are like, oh, well, in men, it's this number, and in women, it's this number. And I'm always like, skirt, hi, hello. What does that mean? Like, are we talking about testosterone? Are we talking about like body fat percentage to like muscle? Because we just can't say that anymore. Like, we got to dig deeper, and we just can't be lazy, and we have to be expansive. So right now, yeah, I feel like I'm queering my school in the South.
Necessary and really hard work.
Hmm.
Um, the your line of like we are not extracurriculars feels so central and is like both about like the structure of a curriculum and also just about like the way that knowledge is passed down in ways that are like both like perpetuating these power systems and are just like not fully accurate.
Also, that it's just not correct. It's just not correct. And I can like call 5 people as like, people in a study that we could do or something. It's like, I have examples. It's not that hard. It's not that, it's a lot easier than some folks think it is to just be kind and inclusive and expansive in what you were taught. And like just this idea that like what you learned 20 years ago might have evolved to like present day really blows people's minds as well.
Yeah. And what inspired you to get into this work?
Well, birth work. So I moved to Brooklyn, well, to New York with a musical theater degree with a BFA. So I was doing the grind. I was doing shows all over New York. I even went to Paris and like all over the country. And so my day job was babysitting. And I started really enjoying doing infants and like newborns. And so I had a part-time job as a babysitter for like a 1.5-year-old, but his mom was about to have a baby. So she was like, I just need an extra pair of hands in this transition. And so we basically had like a month, the three of us together. I guess the four of us, because little babe was inside, just like getting to know the house, getting to know the flow of things. And then she went to her scheduled cesarean. 3 days later, she came home. I was there. Her husband like dropped the bag at the doors and was like, all right, babe, I'm going back to work, left. And she just sort of like held herself and like wobbled back to her bedroom with this baby and just sat there and stared at the wall. And like her 2-year-old was like, mommy, can I like up, can you pick me up? She's like, I can't pick you. And it was like, I was like 24 or something. I was just like, something's afoot, like something's off. Why is she so sad? We're told that like you have a baby and everything's great and it's not that hard and you just like breastfeed and chest feed and it's easy and everything happens. And I just got like a very real look into um, how unhealthy the lack of support around reproductive health is. And that was like the first nudge. And then I met a doula, and then it just sort of snowballed from there. And I started to get into the work more full time, and has taken over my life.
And what brought you to the shift from doula work to midwifery?
I enjoy the time and the emotional connection of doula work. I think we'll get into this later, but I'm a Pisces sun. So it's like, it's very, feelings and like walking into a room and like being like, oh God, what happened? Like before anyone saying anything, that serves me well in the doula space. But I wanted more of a hands-on interaction and also approach to truly having an impact on people's healthcare. As a doula, there's only so much I can do, so much I can control, so much I can shield people from, say, the hospital system, if that's where they choose to give birth, or if that's where they choose to miscarry or to abort. Um, and there was only so much I could do as a doula, and so much like legally I was allowed to do. So it just feels like I'll have more of a positive impact on people's full health, not just talking about people getting pregnant and giving birth, but full health of a whole family. Well, not the whole family, some of the people in the family, but really being more of like a holistic provider and having that power in the room to change birthing outcomes and health outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that answers a lot of the next question, but just to like give you a chance to say it specifically, like how do you describe your support philosophy, your approach to the work that you're doing in all of these roles?
Mm. I think in general, my support philosophy is that if you have to interact with the medical system in any way, you need a doula in the room. I don't care if that's for you to have like your blood drawn, or you're just going for your routine checkup, or if you just need to go to get like antibiotics for strep throat. Like you need someone in the room whose job it is to look after your emotional health and to check in with you and to just take a second, sit on your level and be like, are you okay? Like, do you understand everything that was just said? Because providers are given 10 minutes. And that's because of insurance companies, whoever they work for, blah, blah, blah. So my philosophy is like deep, emotionally connected support. And support in many ways. Support in whatever people want for their bodies and what they want for their lives. Non-judgmental support is something that is a foundation of doula work, or what I think all doula work should be. And that's definitely something that I'm going to be bringing into my practice. That if you choose to do this with your birth, that's your choice. It has nothing to do with me. I will keep you safe and make sure you know all of the options around that choice. And then I'm going to honor you as you make that choice for your body and your family. Um, yeah, I think that's what comes to mind. Just deep like support. I'm like seeing this image of just like roots growing, just like bring in the plants.
We're
But just
all
like
about bringing the plants.
exactly, just like deep roots that like wrap around each other in some ways and just like branch off from each other in other ways that like I know. And even just as a doula, I'm like a part of many people's lives for like the rest of their life. And then as a midwife, I hope to be the same way and just have some more branches and roots interacting and feeding off of each other and taking care of each other.
Yeah, and those and some of those things where, right, like there is the sense of like, even if um I think sometimes we think about relationships in terms of like how long they are, and we like put the value of a relationship in like, oh, you've been like in relationship with this person for like so many years, and therefore it's like a good strong relationship. um but I know I've had experiences with doula clients, for example, where like I support them through, a pregnancy, a birth, at like, maybe a few months postpartum. And then like maybe we don't really stay in relationship. And yet there is this sense of like, I know I carry pieces from that relationship with me. Like I trust that they do too. Sometimes we run into each other at the farmer's market, like way down the line. And it's like, oh my gosh, hi. Um, and I do think there is like a sense of that depth of relationship is so meaningful, and I think can happen particularly like in some of these like heightened moments of like a pregnancy or some of these like big transitional times. Like
Totally.
those relationships can grow really deep really quickly.
I still have people that like I spend 5 minutes inside of an exam room at Planned Parenthood that I'm like, I know it would be creepy, but I would really love to have their number just to like check in on them and just to be like, you okay?
Yeah, I think that's like really I think particularly in abortion work, that's like that like deep immediate relationship building is like really like such a superpower. I think about like, in like social work school, they like gave us all of these like lectures about like how to build rapport with people and like how to introduce yourself, and like they like operationalized this like way of
Mhm.
being. And I'm like, oh, I've done shifts in abortion clinic, like we don't need this.
Exactly. Totally. And that like, especially now in the time of COVID, like how after meeting someone for a minute, I am like holding their face, holding their hand, like wiping away tears, like, and then they just like get in an Uber and I never see them again. But I do that like 10 times in a day. It's just, I mean, that for me, like as a Pisces, that was like really where I thrived. But yeah, I haven't thought about that in a while, because they kicked doulas out of the
Yeah.
clinics in New York with COVID, but like hard and like fast, deep connections and support. Um, Truly being like, hey, I've got your back if you want me to stop the procedure, just really um, being empowered and like allowed to just be support. No
Mm-hmm.
work, no like other tasks, just make sure they're okay. Um, and make sure they get home okay. It's just so quick, but just so like tender and necessary.
Yeah. Oh, so you've previewed it for us a little bit. I've asked you about your natal work, and now I want to know about more of your natal chart. Uh, so you're a Pisces sun. What's your moon and your rising?
So I have a Leo moon, which is like my biggest shame, and my rising is Taurus. So just
Mm.
like at home, feeling my feelings, but then every now and then I need to be the center of attention and like go out, but then like I need to come home.
Go out, do the thing, but like make sure there's a bubble bath after.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like making food before I go out. That was definitely my vibe back when going out was a thing.
And what's your favorite thing about being a queer support person and becoming a queer provider, or about working with queer and trans families?
Um, I love being in a room with people and like supporting people where we can both like relax. We can just be like, no one's gonna say something shady. No one's gonna trip up. No one's gonna like be like muscling their way through being inclusive or being expansive. Um, I mean, it's also as someone who wants to have children eventually, it's also like seeing potential of what community and like what having a family can look like. Um, it's also, and I hate this word, but I do love like the resilience of people choosing and fighting for the life that sometimes people as a child never dreamed that they could have. And I love being able to support that. And especially as a doula going to hospitals, just being like, I'm stopping everyone before they come in the door. We are going through pronouns. We are going through, like, we are going through expansive language. I enjoy being like the padding around queer families, and I'm honored to do that, and I really look forward to providing care um, that is welcoming for everyone, and that a place where they can just like come sit in the waiting room and like look up and see pictures of pregnant people that look like them or look like their partner, or look like their sibling. Um, yeah, that really excites me to sort of build a community gathering place for folks who are like us.
The big gay birth center slash community gathering space.
I know. It's like it just keeps getting bigger. Like, soon there's going to be some sort of like sport gym, maybe some,
Like also like a dance hall slash
yeah,
like
just,
food bank probably.
yes, and yes.
All of it. All of it. Um and if you could improve something about the experience of pregnancy and birth for queer and trans families, what would it be? Or I guess maybe another way of asking the question is like, what's something that is uh, different in the future for
Mm,
queer and trans folks around pregnancy and birth,
it's
aside
different.
from the big gay birth center slash community event space slash whatever soccer field?
Yeah, someone else will have to take care of the sports. That's not my ministry. What's going to be different about the future for queer folks and trans folks is that care will not be so difficult to get. Like good healthcare that isn't like tolerant, but that is like deeply invested in like who we are. Um, Not in spite of, but like celebrating in, and that the textbooks, the resources, the websites aren't all like mama and like women and like yoni. And, it's just like we can all just be like, we can all come to the table and we can all have this bounty. And we can all be supported. I mean, that's the future. It's like I want to get like tattooed on my forehead, like not all pregnant people are women, and just hopefully small, like slowly spread this gay agenda everywhere. Um, I just hope that has more ease for people, and especially with some of the laws that have been passed that like we can be refused care just because of who we are now. Um, and in the future, that doesn't exist. That wouldn't even be a thought that people have.
Yeah. And what's a piece of advice that you have for new or aspiring queer and trans birth workers?
Hmm. I would say to protect the most tender parts of yourself. Not siphon them off, don't put them behind like a metal door, but maybe someone told me this at the Decolonizing Birth Conference last year, put a screen over your heart so that it can filter the good stuff and then everything else that you don't need doesn't come in. Because you are going to bump into people who think that being inclusive is erasing like their womanhood or erasing this like stronghold of like birth is for women and that's it and like that's all it like this is our one thing that we have, please don't take it away from me. You're going to run into that, and they're going to be like incredible providers that you thought were really cool and then they'll like hit you with some sort of really homophobic, transphobic jargon and it'll hit you like a ton of bricks. But I'm hoping that if you have this little screen around your tender parts, that it won't devastate you as much. And also, if you want to go into like the educational industrialized complex, not everyone is a QT BIPOC person. Barely anyone is. And so it's tough to go to class and to not have your experience reflected back to you, especially because as queer people, we create our environment so like meticulously and with such care and with such intention that to then have to go to a school like I went to school when I was 30 and so I had spent all these years creating my queer little bubble in Brooklyn and then I went to the South and I went to higher education. So just knowing that like your experience won't be reflected back to you but like you matter, you are valid, and once you get those really expensive pieces of paper that says you can do the thing that you want to do, you can then get back to what we do best, which is like creating family and community wherever we are and like finding each other and deeply supporting each other. And then once you do graduate, that you have to do that for younger people. Like you have to look back and put your hand out and bring um, people with you.
Oh, it's so beautiful. um I the idea of like what like one of the things that queer folks do best and all the time and like have really honed it as a survival strategy is to like so meticulously and intentionally create space and community. And I really resonate with just like the heartbreak of like going into systems that like don't give a shit. um,
Like all we do is like talk about our feelings at bars, and then you have to go to the school and no one cares about your feelings. It's hard.
yeah. um yeah, and that there are people who are like out who like have their hands out like waiting to like help pull folks along. And I think that that's like such a beautiful um what a beautiful gift that queer community
Mhm.
has um has to offer are those like those hold fasts in the swirl of institutional bullshit.
Mhm. Mhm.
um And I mean, I could listen to you talk about all of your reproductive work all day forever. But what's something not natal about you and your life that you want to share?
Um, this question is hard. Uh, there's two things that stand out. I'm gonna embarrass myself. I really love K-pop because of the way that like gender is very non-existent in this weird way. And then I also really love graveyards. Greenwood Cemetery up in Brooklyn would highly recommend, 10 out of 10. We've got some cool Decatur cemeteries down here, so I like to spend my time around dead folks, listening to K-pop.
As a fellow cemetery wanderer, like I really support that so hard.
Yes.
Oh. And finally, if people aren't going to wander around cemeteries with you, where can they find you on the internet?
The Instagram, I am Lucia the Doula on Instagram, usually calling out turfs and swerfs, really all about bumping up Black queer folks, and yeah, just the usual shenanigans on there. And you can connect with me via that, and we can sort of like bump over to email or text or something like that. And I provide sliding scale services for queer and Black folks. And right now, as a student, I'm really just happy to support people in any way that I can. So if money's an issue, shoot me a message.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much. It was such a gift getting to talk with you.
Thank you. This is such a like lovely way to spend a weekday rather than on a Zoom class about something random.